for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby Maine. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
Here's $100,000, and it's all yours.
When Maynard Jackson made this plea with $100,000 in cash spread out before him, it was a searing image of how desperate the city had become for clues in the seemingly unending string of murders. And shortly after the mayor made his pitch, Muhammad Ali came into town to sweeten the pot.
I'm going to announce here now that I'm pledging $400,000 to help solve this problem.
Lord forgive me for this trap shit. Sergeant Smack make it backflip. Telly Hank did with the action. With the Vato speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby Maine. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
Forgotten no more.
The Atlanta child murders case goes back under the microscope after more than 40 years.
1979 to 1981, there were 25 children, young black males, that were murdered. And of these, 22 were attributed to Wayne Williams.
Outside Police Chief Napper's office, the reminder is still there. But though homicide files show 6 juveniles murdered since the arrest of Wayne Williams, none bears the once common links to the city's string of child murders.
It's hard not to have been sensitized by the recent experience with the missing murdered kids. There is no reason for our investigators at this point to feel that they're linked or that we're experiencing another kind of problem. But you know, we keep open the possibility that there may be, you know, some linkages, but there's nothing at this point to indicate that there are.
Excluding task force victims, the number of people under 17 murdered in Atlanta has increased each year recently. In 1978, for instance, there were 3 murders. In 1979, 6. In 1980, 7 children were murdered. And this year, the number has already doubled to 14. But most of the cases are quickly solved. Only 2 from this year are still open. And in the city's most recent murder, a teenager shot this weekend, the case has already been closed. The homicide squad does miss the 5 detectives still assigned to the task force. Behind its closed doors, investigators still work on the 26 unsolved child murders and prepare evidence in the 2 where an arrest has been made. But just 35 people now make up the force, down from a peak of 102. But though its numbers have been reduced, police officials say there are no plans now to disband the task force. They tell me they still feel it is the best method of handling this investigation. Do you need those people back? Would you like to have them back?
Well, we would always like to have more people on the streets for visibility purposes. I think in due time we'll get them back. There's certainly a priority to be given to what they're doing. And when we feel that there's nothing more for them to do over there, we'll bring them back.
Calls to the task force, which used to come in hundreds a day, have now dwindled to almost none. But in the missing persons department, officials say they're getting just as many calls as ever about missing children, though most are found right away. Investigators say the legacy of the past 2 years may be that now no one assumes a child will come home. Hank Philippi, Action News.
Douglas County was dragged into this massive investigation when it dragged the body of 21-year-old Duncan from the Chattahoochee 2 months ago. Since then, a county detective has been working full-time with the task force on the case. He's been trying to retrace Duncan's last day alive, which centered around his home and the Techwood Project. Sheriff Earl Lee now says there is one man he wants to find and question. Right now, Lee thinks he may know who the man is, but doesn't know where he is.
I promise you we're going to locate this person and interview him. But this person may or may not be relevant to the Duncan investigation. I don't know until we've talked to that person.
The sheriff of this suburban county won't say much about his search for the man and can't say if that person will be a witness or a possible suspect in the murder case. What Lee could say today is that he's optimistic about solving it.
I'm optimistic about our case, yes, the Duncan case.
Why?
We're working like the devil to solve it.
The first river victim was Patrick Rogers. He turned up in December of 1980 before any news leaked about the fibers. After that, victims turned up on land, some were in water. It was the same as before and after the fiber announcement. And as a matter of fact, of all the pattern cases, there were only 7 river victims after the announcement of fibers. They were Joseph Bell, Michael McIntosh, Timothy Hill, and also if we consider cases that are not on the task force list, we can also factor in other water cases. We have 2 more. That was a young man found dead in 1979 in Sandy Creek, not far from where Milton Harvey's bicycle was found. His case never made the task force. He was shot in the back, partially clothed. We don't know if there were any fibers found on him. Also, they have refused to acknowledge the presence of black females being killed. A black female was found killed in South Atlanta near the area where Richardson and Terra were found. She was found in a stream. I'm saying all of this occurred during the same time, and at the same time they had females on the task force list. By the time the trial came around,
between 1979 and 1981, more than 24 African Americans were killed or missing. Most of them children and male between the ages of 9 and 28 years old. One child vanished after another, never seen alive again. Their bodies found across metro Atlanta, strangled, suffocated. The first 2 discovered on August 7, 1979. By August the following year, the bodies of 7 more victims were found. 3 months later, the FBI joined the investigation. But a break would not come in the case until April 22, 1981, when a police recruit heard a splash in the Chattahoochee River as Wayne Williams was driving his station wagon across the bridge. 2 days later, the body of Nathaniel Cater shows up downstream. Williams is arrested on Father's Day 1981, charged with Cater's murder, and eventually indicted for his death, as well as the killing of another adult male. 23-year-old Williams was found guilty in 1982 for both killings. He's now serving 2 life sentences. Prosecutors ultimately tied Williams to the deaths of 22 victims through carpet fiber evidence and witnesses. The cases were closed without putting him on trial. Not everyone believed his guilt. There were doubters.
I don't believe Wayne Williams did it. I really don't believe that he did it.
In 2005, DeKalb County Police Chief Louis Graham reopened 5 cases in his jurisdiction, but nothing to exonerate Williams came from it.
As all of you are aware, several weeks ago, the Bureau of Police Services extended an invitation to Mrs. Allison to come to this city to assist us in investigations that are before us at this moment. We did so because Mrs. Allison enjoys a national reputation as a person who has been of assistance with other police departments in this country in dealing with cases of the nature that we're dealing with today. We also invited her because the Bureau of Police Services is committed to doing everything that's humanly possible to bring this nightmare to an end. And in that context, we're very pleased that Mrs. Allison could accept our invitation. And on behalf of the City of Atlanta and the Bureau of Police Services, I want to extend a warm welcome to Mrs. Allison.
Thank you.
And I'm very hopeful, as everybody in this city, that we pray and we hope that Mrs. Allison's presence here will help us to bring to a speedy and successful conclusion the nightmare that is now experiencing in the city of Atlanta.
Have you come across anything that might allow you to come to those conclusions yet?
At this time, again, I'm going to tell all of you, I will say nothing whatsoever that is ever going to hurt a police case. We're going to be working very hard We're going to work day and night. I do have many thoughts, many ideas. These police here have to get used to me. They've got to understand me. And this is why some of the men that are here today with me will help interpret my clues. And since I've already gotten feelings, just on a radio show, I've gotten a lot of feelings. I knew about a little boy's name. I've never been to Atlanta. I also knew that there was one little child that had something to do near a hospital, that I would find his body there, between a school and a hospital. I was told by some reporters, I don't remember who, because many were calling me, that one was found there.
I'm Haley Mason here at the live desk. Convicted murderer and the key suspect in the Atlanta child murders, Wayne Williams, has been denied parole. This is the letter the parole board sent to Wayne Williams and his team days ago. They said after reviewing his case, the board said, quote, "There's been an insufficient amount of time served to date given the nature and circumstances of the offenses." Now, the board will not consider another parole request from Williams until November of 2027. A couple weeks ago, I met exclusively with the team behind the Wayne Williams Freedom Project, and I spoke with the man who was in the car with Wayne Williams on the night the FBI took him into questioning.
I kept saying it could have been me. You know, this could have been me. And so this is how I know for sure that Wayne hadn't done anything that they said he's done. I was ready.
And that was Jimmy Howard, who says he helps lead the group that's trying to get Williams exonerated. The group's co-founder, Hazel Horn, told me tonight that she is shocked beyond words, but will not give up.
All right, thank you, Haley.
And we begin tonight with that big announcement from Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Police and state investigators will take another look at the decades-old child murder cases.
Well, more than 20 black children and young men were killed between 1979 and 1981. Suspect Wayne Williams was arrested, but only convicted of the murders of 2 adults. Today's announcement comes as law enforcement across the country are closing cold cases by comparing DNA samples to a public genealogy database.
Look once again at evidence that the city of Atlanta has in its possession, evidence that the GBI has in its possession, to once again take a fresh look at these cases and to determine once and for all if there's additional evidence that may be tested.
Well, for more than 2 years, Atlanta's lived in fears. It was an especially scary time for children.
Well, Fox 9's Carrie Charles is live at City Hall tonight. And Carrie, you met some brothers who remember growing up in fear because of the child murders.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, most of those targeted were African-American boys. The Jordan brothers, they are representative of so many now adults who grew up during those scary times. They say they remember being fearful that what happened to those young victims could have also happened to them. They might have been young, but Walter and Wayne Jordan remember police finding 29 bodies, mostly of children, in the late 70s and early 80s in parts of Atlanta.
It was rough on all the kids that we went to elementary school with.
I met the brothers in what is now called Webster Park. They remember during the 3-year period that terrorized the city, families coming together looking out for children in the community.
There was no parent that did not have permission not to discipline us. There was no parent that did not have permission to give us guidance.
The park just blocks from their childhood home in Southwest Atlanta and not far from where some of the victims were last seen.
Could not go to our best friend Tony's house if it wasn't discussed the night before between our parents. So now, instead of going home, Mr. Ashley, Tony's father, would pick us up from school, and we didn't take the cab.
On Thursday, city leaders said the police department would re-examine the unsolved cases.
I always thought they would. I always thought the city would come back.
The Jordan brothers remember Wayne Williams being named a suspect.
I don't feel that Wayne Williams killed my child, but like I say, it don't matter now. They already been forgiven and coming to justice.
He was later tried and convicted in the deaths of 2 adults, not the child murders.
I mean, there's always speculations and what people feel and what people think, but at the end of the day, I would like for the city to pour all their resources into really giving us the truth and the real answers that we deserve as native Atlantans.
Now, there is a younger brother, but he's too young to remember what took place during those times. The older two brothers, they did tell me they even remember going to school at points and the superintendent being out in the morning, driving around the community to bus stops, checking on children, making sure they felt safe. Coming up tonight at 11, hear from those boys, now men, about the plan their mother put in place when she didn't want them riding the school bus to get them to and from safely. Live in downtown Atlanta, Kerry Charles, Fox 5 News.
It was a terrifying time. Kerry, thanks. Fox 5 senior I-Team reporter Dale Russell is one of the few reporters who covered Williams' trial who was still working in media in Atlanta.
And Dale, these cases are known as the Atlanta child murders, but suspect Wayne Williams was convicted of killing 2 adults. So what can you tell us about the other cases?
Well, he was tried and convicted for killing 2 adults, Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Cater. But what a lot of people don't understand, Sine, is that there was evidence introduced in the trial. The judge allowed it, and the prosecutors brought it in, on the deaths of 10 other young black men and children, ranging in age from 11 to 28, but most were in their early teens. And the evidence was fiber evidence, dog hairs. There were eyewitnesses who saw some of the kids with Wayne Williams before they were killed. There was even blood evidence matching a couple of the victims. So even though it was 2 adults that he was tried for those of us who were watching the trial unfold, you got the sense of the Atlanta child murder trial because those 10 other cases, not all of them, but 10 other cases were introduced.
Now, you can understand why some family members are frustrated and want closure when their particular cases were not adjudicated. But back in 2007, there were DNA tests done, and DA Paul Howard said Wayne Williams did it. What's going to happen differently, do you think?
That was his exact quote, Russ, is that Paul Howard said, the mystery is over. Wayne Williams is the Atlanta child killer because court-ordered test of the dog hairs found on 5 different victims, 5 different locations, all were matched. That's a layman's terms, matched to a dog similar to Wayne Williams' dog or Wayne Williams' dog Sheba. That was 5 different cases, and Paul Howard was convinced and said this should have brought closure to the families in 2007. And you may remember, Ross, a couple of years before that, DeKalb County reopened 5 of their cases. They're still open. They spent thousands of dollars a year investigating. I looked at their investigation after they were finished. They found nothing. They had 1 suspect who had been eliminated 25 years earlier.
Hey, it's your guy Popalot. I'm back on MOBB business. We in the great state of Georgia with it. You know we headed to the A. All my guys from the city, y'all get in the comment box, especially if you was around at this time. We about to talk about a sinister time in the city. Now, when you grow up in urban cities and sometimes even small cities, they would have these events that would become national news that you would somehow get drawn into only because it's happening in your area, but you would never forget it for the rest of your life. Now, personally, I remember a time growing up in New York where they had a lunatic by the name of the Zodiac Killer on the loose. And almost every day I would leave for school, my mom would tell me, don't tell anybody your birthday. Or maybe you could have been growing up in LA and around the same time and seen the 1992 or the Rodney King riots, or even something more recent if you grew up in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area in 2002 and you had to pump gas looking over your shoulders for the DC sniper. And I can go on and on about these times that occurred in certain cities, and y'all feel free to get in the comment box if I didn't mention one and you lived through one. But none of these times was more scary or more memorable than what would occur in the city of Atlanta in between 1979 and 1981. Now, I know we got a few youngins tuned in, but I definitely know that we got some people from the city of Atlanta that was there at this time and know what it was like to go to school or to go to store for your mother or to go try to play in the playground with your homeboys. Y'all get in the comment box because this is almost a forgotten time in the city. Now, with this being the late 1970s, early 1980s in the city of Atlanta, this is going to be pre-BMF. So before BMF, Atlanta was a town where Meach described it as people riding old schools and Chevelles. Now when you go, you're going to see people flying all kind of luxury vehicles up and down Buckhead. But in this time period, I would literally consider Atlanta the dirty South and even the country kind of. So with that being said, if anybody ever been to a town where you consider it country, you just know how close a lot of the residents really are, where people will call themselves cousins, or this is my cousin, and people will be cousins that you didn't even know from across town. And I'm assuming that it was just like this in the city of Atlanta. So when 30 kids end up murdered and missing in a span of 3 years, that's alarming. And 30 victims might even be an understatement, because I've seen places where they said it was 25. They charged Wayne Williams with 27. Some media outlets record the number as 29. And I want to say it could possibly be higher than that, because how many children went unreported due to their families or their parents dealing with whatever situations that they was dealing with. Now, I can break down the victims one by one, but I chose to do it by year because I feel like that's important. Now, in 1979, they're going to say that it was 4 murder victims, then 13 in 1980, and then it would eventually be 8 in 1981 after Wayne Williams' arrest. Now, at the time, and even now, I want to say, it's some speculation to whether Wayne Williams was the person responsible. And that's one of the main reasons I chose to do this episode, because I want to hear from my people in the city of Atlanta. Because even though Atlanta changed drastically, which I want to say was the first city to have a housing project, and probably even the city that had the most, to now they have none. But a lot of these victims came from those housing projects that are no longer in the city. Now, my view of Wayne Williams when this case first came to my knowledge at a younger age, as it comes up in Georgia history, seems like every few years they kind of talk about it. When he was arrested, it was a little bit of evidence, some people linking him. One victim said that he escaped from Wayne Williams. They brought the case up in several different counties, and then they say they linked him to DNA evidence. But with the history certain parts of the South have, and I know Atlanta is a predominantly black city now, we talking about 1979, 1981. Some people will bring up the KKK. Some people will bring up the Atlanta Police Department's desperation to solve this case. And some people just blame Wayne Williams being the easy suspect, as in anybody's eyes, he was exuberating strange behavior. I don't even know if I said or used that right, but he was just doing a lot of weird shit, like hopping in his car while paparazzi was watching him and he knew they was following him. And just even almost to this day, where he would say that he was trained by the government and all kind of just wild shit. And whether he knew it or not at the time, none of that shit would look good for him, as he would be arrested on June 21st, 1981, charged with 2 of the murders, one which occurred in July 1980 of Anthony Cater, and another one that would occur in April of 21-year-old Jimmy Ray Payne. Now, the police would get on his trail on the 22nd of May in 1981, when the surveillance team watching the Chattahoochee River would hear a big splash, to them indicating something had been dropped in the river. The first car to exit that bridge after hearing that loud splash was driven by Wayne Williams. Now, it's conflicting information as far as to what he told the police at the time of that stop. Some information says that he was going to visit a singer for an audition that he had coming up. Wayne Williams, who some would call a geek, had constructed his own pirate radio station where he was able to send out his own broadcast. Some rumors say that when asked by the cops what was he doing at the bridge at 2:50 a.m., he replied, trying to get to the other side. Whether that was a good idea or not, after 12 hours of deliberating, the jury would find him guilty on February 27, 1981, of Decatur and Payne murders. As far as the other 25 murders, certain counties would open up and reinvestigate the murders years later, pinning them on Wayne Williams. But I want to know what my people from Georgia think, specifically the city of Atlanta, if you was around at this time. I would definitely want to see what y'all got to say about this in the comment box. And y'all make sure y'all hit the red subscribe button and that bell so y'all could be notified when this real trill spill shit is dropping. And y'all know the routine around here. Y'all get in the comment box. Y'all flood it. Let me know what cities I need to go to, what stories I miss, who I need to cover, what I got wrong. And get at me on Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. And shout out to the A. Appreciate y'all rolling out the red carpet. Y'all know we be back soon. MOBB, ties.